Hey, it's Richard here. My name's Richard Miller. Some of you know that I write for this blog regularly, but I wanted to make some comments today. It's about my former workplace, and my former co-workers and union members are coming up for contract early next year. So I want to comment on that and a little bit about leadership, because to share some of the lessons I've learned that were valuable to me, and also because this dynamic can exist in any workplace and in life in general, in politics. And I just want to explain, in my former workplace, a public utility, I was in the blue collar local. There were actually four local, one's a management local, but there are four locals technically. There were two AFSCME locals. Those are the most important, representing the white collar and the blue collar workers. I was in the blue collar. For many years when I was there, we tried to unite. Myself, the three of us in particular that were key in it, Roger Martinez, Cheryl Zur, and myself. Cheryl was president and we were both vice presidents of the local. And some of the young people that are there now, they've already lost what we have and what gains that were made for us in the past. And of course, gains didn't come easy. Somebody fought for them. They don't give us anything. And so in '97, that was the last time I was in negotiations. We did, as we always did, fought for, I'm talking about the key people here because not everybody did this, but myself, Roger and Cheryl in particular, pushed the idea, and every time, all the time, to unite the two AFSCME locals. There was a lot of opposition to that. That historically, well, firstly, the bosses are opposed to it, but the historical animosity. First, the white collar crossed our picket lines in '97. Not all of them, but most of in '85. Not all of them, but most of them. So we've always pushed for that, to unite the two locals. In the '97 negotiations, we did what we always did. We were we were three of us were on the negotiating team. We pushed for joint meetings of the two members. Historically, what has happened is the leaderships meet. They say, oh, there's a Labour committee of the locals. It's the same when two big unions merge. There's never a thorough debate within the rank and file of the members of those unions on the workplaces, in the union halls, a thorough democratic debate, and then that decision it's made between the leaderships, the bureaucracies of these bodies. And so we'd always go through this process where there was, oh, well, the leadership, there's a Labour committee. We always argued for the joint meetings and for the memberships to meet. And there's a reason for that. Because when people are in a room together, it's like anything else. It's like when you're on strike and you look at that potential power and the unity. It's exhilarating, and it's for the right reasons. And of course, it's natural that the bosses, the capitalists, those in power want to break that unity in one form or another. But in '97, we'd struggled at the table, of course, against the employer. That's the easy part. But with the leadership of the other local, the white-collar local, to call call mass meetings, public membership meetings of the two locals. Every excuse was thrown up, of course. They were the most vicious attacks on their own members because the leadership are smart, apparently. They supported it. Some of them are still there. They supported it. They said their members are rotten. Not that. That's incorrect. Their members are spineless was one excuse. They need baby steps. They don't care. They don't want to do it. They're all of the excuses. That on the one hand. On the other, behind the back was, I'm too aggressive. Martinez is too aggressive. Cheryl is this. Martinez was accused one time, we found out, of slashing tires. I mean, it was absurd terrorism, basically. We were the reason that the unions couldn't unite. This was the argument they were making to us as well. That their member, well, it's you guys, blah, blah, blah. We overrode all those arguments and proved them wrong. But in '97, when we could not get any more at the table, we recognized we couldn't get any more at the table. It was a really tactical question of when we came out publicly and made it clear that an obstacle to the two unions were the leadership of the white collar local. We put out a flyer, I have it still. We put out a flyer that pointed this out, not in a nasty sectarian name-calling way. that pointed it out. So a member of the white collar union took it to their meeting, to their membership meeting, and it was expressing the need to joint membership meetings to strengthen us. And unfortunately, the white collar union leadership that is not for this. Of course, that is sacrilege. You're never to tell the rank and file of anybody any union or anybody for that matter. You're never to tell them what the members, their leadership is actually saying. It's off limit. So anyway, we put that out. Someone took it to their membership meeting, made a motion, it passed. The rank and file, the so-called baby steps, spineless, don't care rank and file, voted for it. And the leadership all opposed it. They were forced to come out into the open. They couldn't say that they opposed one united local, because the average worker knows that unity is strength. And those that are not politically active, and also our history has been hidden from us, and there's been no mass movement since the 60s and everything else. We're in a lull, a terrible lull, and so the average member couldn't figure out why is it. Of course. This animosity that existed between the two locals, they crossed our line in the 85, most of them. They're women, a lot of them. They're higher paid, they're engineers, some of them. All of these reasons that when we were just ditch diggers, although we have skilled workers and everything else, highly skilled workers in our union, we tended to be more the blue collar, well, we were the blue collar union. And so there were all of these reasons for why we couldn't unite. We broke that down immediately with that flyer we put out. We had a joint meeting. We had a meeting of stewards and supporters, about 90 people at it, from hydrographers to janitors, engineers to backhoe operators like myself. And we'd been negotiating for 4 months. And at the next meeting with management, $1 million appeared. And the concessions went away. It was so clear. What it was an attempt to, we had gauged the mood. We realised we could get no more at the table. We had to come out. That was always our strategy, to mobilise and to organise. And we'd argued with the leadership of the white collar union, but we felt this was the time, and that's what brought about this huge concession. 4 months of bargaining. They didn't have this. They didn't have that. Suddenly, they threw that out. Unfortunately, the white collar union capitulated and settled. Didn't meet with us first. Didn't discuss it. We hadn't done anything. I know we'd gotten the permission from the members to stop for 3 days, to call a 3-day or a 3-day strike. I can't remember without going to my records. But rather than discuss, we hadn't done anything yet. Rather than discuss, strategize, and everything else, what it was, you see, is the fear. It's the fear of leaderships, of a real struggle. And so that was in ~97. And that was a great lesson. We're here 20 years later almost. And so we have those two AFSCME locals. So why is it that the leadership of those locals, why is it there's not a one local? Most members will agree that there should be one local. And I raise this only because there's got to be a similar dynamic, and I've got a couple of notes just to remember what to say. A similar dynamic in other workplaces throughout the United States, whether you're union or whether you're not union. It's different whether you're union, but it's the same. There's only two forces of power in the workplace: the boss or the organized workers. They'll use racism, subtle and not so subtle, but there's racism, sexism in particular at all times. The women in dividing us, and women and men, blue collar, white collar. I remember the engineers among the more backward because they were higher paid and what have you. So that's just the way of the world, and it's our job to counter those attempts to undermine unity of the working class. So if you look at why it was the leadership. It's the leadership of particular back then anyway. When I was there, the white collar union in particular that was obstacle, because if they would have supported us, we would have one union by now. Instead of blaming me, blaming like the nasty thing about Martinez slashing tires, which was absolute slander, all of that sort of stuff, personal attacks, you'll get that. You've got to weave through them in politics. And so why would they oppose it? Well, the union structure is this, for those that are not in unions. You have those international union, between the international union and the local unions, in AFSCME's case and in a similar way in most other cases, there is a district council. We belong to a district council with 26 or 27 other locals in it in this area, including both of us, the white and the blue. And we had delegates to that district council, and we were quite active in it. We were more of a militant local in this area. We were leading campaigners for the Labour Party in this area. We supported Mazzocchi and his Labour Party push back in the 80s and early 90s. Various things. It was a very left-wing local, AFSCME Local 444, and we believed that we had to struggle in the wider Labour movement to change the wider Labour movement. No local can win alone. So we were the more militant. So another a wider perspective. The white collar union leadership were not that way, and if you look at it from their perspective, a united local would have given us more delegates at the council, more delegates at international conventions. So against the unity of those two locals were the white collar leadership, because their view was, they wouldn't admit it, is, well, if you unite the two locals, will I still be in a leadership position? Can I get elected? And I remember when they threw that up about one time, we were in negotiations with one of their presidents, who was a rotten scumbag. John Rohan is his name. They threw that at us, and we said, me and Martinez, I remember, said to them, we won't run. We'll take back to our members that you get to choose the presidency for the first, if we join. In other words, everything they threw at us, the issue for us is we're stronger as a united local, whether I'm leading it or whether I'm not leading it. Whether Roger's leading it or Cheryl's leading it, we were stronger. That was the bottom line for us. But of course, many of them, their position, not openly, was that, I might not be a president of a united local. That's one of the reasons. Some may have just been unwilling to fight within their own union for that position to unite the locals. That's another question, and they may have been decent people, but not willing to put the fight. Internal fight is the hardest fight of all. It's one thing to fight the boss; it's another the struggle within the trade union movement or within any organisation, because it's your people, So there's them. Then there's the district council. The district council leadership, they can't say we're opposed. They don't interfere, but they do interfere in a sneaky way. But they would look at it and say, well, are we going to get another 5 delegates like 444, who are always the struggle, class struggle delegates, more militant delegates, or are we going to get more passive, cooperative leadership like 2019? And it wouldn't be likely. We tended to be the more active, and so that they were against it, and of course then the employers were against it. So that was the whole dynamic that went on there. But that end result in '97 that I've described, and if you go to the blog, I don't know if it's still up there, I'll put it back up at the top of the blog, Facts for Working People blog. There is an assessment of our '97 negotiations, and I'm going to put this, if it looks okay, on the blog, and I'll probably put that back up. But so the question of leadership, this is everywhere. If you look at the leadership of the trade union movement, they're absolutely disgraceful. On foreign policy, they say nothing. I don't want to get into it here because it's another video, another article or discussion, but there is a serious crisis that's taking place, global crisis of capitalism. Syria, Yemen, you've got the Russians moving nuclear missiles to Kaliningrad because the US has got troops over there. US has put missiles in Poland because as a threat, to prevent a threat from Iran. This is nonsense. Nobody in Europe believes it. Americans are not in tune with it. We're all either diverted or just given up, or we don't feel, what can we do? Look at our politics. Look at that debate the other night. It was a disaster. It was actually legitimized by questions from those people that were sitting there. Well, the question that would have legitimized it would have said, what is this garbage that you're giving the American people? here? That would have been the question, not to ask a question as if it was a legitimate process. So the thing about leadership is this, is that there has been ever since PATCO in 1980, the defeated strikes through the 80s, Hormel, which was a civil war, Easton, where the Labour officialdom said, oh, well, they forced him to, ICANN, I think, Lorenzo, they forced him to sell the airline and it went out of business, and that was a success to them, the Labour leadership. Well, what sort of success is that? You haven't got a job. You should have nationalised it. That's what you should have done. That's what should have been done. Just moved his capital into something else. There was Hormel, there was Pittston, there was a Detroit strike, the Teamsters and the newspapers. There were 2 Greyhound strikes that took national character. So you had all those things. Well, there was an attempt there to change, to push back against that offensive after Reagan fired the PATCO workers, 15,000 of them, banned them for life. But what's the leadership you have in the trade union movement, when there's no movement, when the class antagonisms is at a lull, when there's no open struggle, big movements against capital and against austerity and against workers' movement to struggle because they need to pay the rent. It's not so much a thought out thing. But when the movement is in a lull, there have been defeats, then the leadership that you get are the most self-serving, fitting. If you take being in the leadership of locals, you can fly to conferences, you go to international conventions. We used to go, but we were trying to build a national opposition, and we actually started to build a national opposition and published an opposition bulletin in AFSCME that was published in 10 states. So people run now and they say, well, I'm going to go and I'll bring messages back to my members. Well, you don't need messenger boys. You need people that are going to try to change the trade union movement and organise labour so that we can have some successes against big business, and also draw in the millions of unorganised and working class people in our communities and everything else. So that part and parcel of the reason we have this leadership, this bureaucratic, passive leadership, not in the trade union movement or in any movement when there's a lull, is that's who floats to the top. In big, huge movements, when conflict breaks out more into the open, you get then the different leadership arises, and that's exactly what the leadership of the white collar local were afraid of. But if we joined the locals and had membership meetings, getting people into a meeting, because when people are in meetings together, they sense their power. They see each other, they discuss things, they put their hands up, yay, nay, and they talk to each other. And if a leadership's not willing to fight the bosses, not willing to go on the offensive, it resists that with a plague, because they see that to bring these bodies together, to get the membership out and active, then they will place demands on them they're unwilling to fight for. It will push them into a confrontation with the bosses that and hurt the relationship that they've built with the bosses based on labour peace. And that's why it's not so much corruption. It's not because they're stealing. It's not I'm talking at the higher level now. It's not so much because they're obscene salaries and what have you. So I mean, somebody once asked me about Malcolm X, and because I always think he's such a great example of people who transform themselves, but they don't transform themselves. The movement transforms them. I mean, within 20 years or so, probably less. I'd have to, I'm just throwing that out there. Look what he went from. He was a pimp for a while and what have you, and what he ended up. And the thing is, so what happened was in objective situation, there was this mass movement, the Black Revolt, the Colonial Revolution, and this all took place, and all the great talents in human beings, and he was one of them, that is dormant in quiet times, comes to the fore. What happens is certain individuals simply speak the voice of the movement that erupts and arises. And I've seen it many times. It's anybody that's spoken in public, and I've spoken in public, you go to a meeting where the mood is strong, people want to fight, people are looking to get into something, people are looking to fight back. The way you speak and everything else is different. So I wanted to raise this because that whole dynamic in the workplace exists, and it's a war. Politics is a war. It's a very rewarding thing, but particularly at this moment in time, well, with some exceptions, there's a lot of things happening in society where people are becoming involved. I remember looking at that Flint struggle, and you see as working class people get involved in these struggles, the working class people come more to the front. Understanding about the world that working class people have comes to the fore, and working class people step into those roles. I was watching something about Detroit, and this woman was talking, a working class woman, and I mean, you could see that how this will develop in the struggles ahead. And when there's a lull, and when the working class isn't in struggle, in moving forward, then you see a lot of the dominant players will be a lot of the petty bourgeois, left-wing academic petty bourgeois, middle-class types. Some of these people are very, very, very heroic and general and good, and some of them, and a lot of them are not. It's not a personal question; it's a class issue, and they have different way of looking at the world and everything else. So anyway, these are just a few things about what went on at work, and I know that it applies to so many workplaces and also to politics, I think, in general. There's good times ahead. Struggles are taking place here. Standing Rock, like you say, Flint. We're seeing things really begin to change, and of course there's the whole global crisis that will force people at some point. Unfortunately, because the trade union leadership are so disgraceful, we're going to go through things we wouldn't necessarily have to go through, but there will be great movements coming up ahead.